What we have here is a medieval compass. No, not that one. This one. This is a medieval wet compass patterned after an 11th century Chinese compass. The magnetic compass was developed in China in the 11th century, and it appeared in Europe sometime in the 12th century. The Chinese compass was composed of a fish-shaped float with a magnetic needle inside and was suspended in a bowl of water. Now let's talk about the difference between true north and magnetic north. Maps are usually oriented in true north along the lines of longitude, but when we use a compass, we're oriented on magnetic north. The north-south lines of longitude meet at the poles, which is the rotational axis of the Earth. However, magnetic north is something different entirely. Convection currents of molten iron and nickel in the Earth's core generates electrical flow, which in turn creates a giant magnetic field around the Earth. The north pole of this giant magnet does not correlate to the rotational axis of the Earth. In fact, the location of magnetic north is constantly on the move. Depending on where you live, the difference between magnetic north and true north can have a great impact on your compass work. For instance, for those of us in Ethelmark, in 1904 there was a 3-degree difference between true north and magnetic north. But due to the movement of the location of magnetic north, today that difference is less than 1 degree. Let's get back on track with our medieval compass. This is iron ore. However, it's a very special kind of iron ore. Look, it's magnetic. It's a naturally occurring magnetic iron ore called magnetite. We are going to use this to magnetize the needle of our compass. But first, I want to show you how a compass reacts around a magnet. Notice the south pole of the compass is attracted to the north pole of the magnet, and the north pole of the compass is attracted to the south pole of the magnet. So what's the point of this exercise with a magnet and a compass? Well, this is basically the same thing as this. So with this new knowledge, we can use a compass to explore our magnetite and identify the north and south poles of the magnetite. Using the compass, I've identified the north pole of the magnetite, and I've marked it with a red dot for convenience. So how do we magnetize our needle? Well, I got a piece of a steel coat hanger and sharpened one end so I could tell one end from the other. Hold the needle by the point and slowly stroke the needle with the north pole of the magnetite. Hold the magnetite vertically and slowly stroke the needle from the point towards the tail. Be sure to lift the magnetite well away from the needle as you reset and stroke the needle about 100 times. Now let's talk about the float. The float is just a round piece of a lightweight wood with a hole drilled through it for the needle. I've impregnated the float with some boiled linseed oil and then melted a little bit of wax into it to make it water resistant. I use a round shape for the float because I think it offers less rotational resistance when the needle is seeking north. All right, let's put our compass in the water and see what it does. The water has to be perfectly still. Magnetic forces are low and water resistance is high, so if there's any current or any movement in the water, the magnetic force will not be able to overcome the resistance. As the compass seeks north, it'll generate some rotational momentum, so it may overshoot north, come to a stop, and then rotate back in the other direction, and so on. So you got to give it some time and just watch what it does. The compass will slowly oscillate back and forth until the magnetic force has finally overcome all of the other forces, and the compass will settle on magnetic north. Proof is in the pudding, baby. If your compass just doesn't want to work properly, double check to make sure that your needle is in fact ferromagnetic. If the needle just keeps falling out of the float too easily, put a little bend in the needle so it stays in the flow better. That's all I got for you, baby. Later.